Hello there, fellow denizens of the internet. My name is Chase Taylor DM, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and why it sucked. I'm being a bit harsh. It wasn't a terrible movie. It was an incredibly entertaining movie. There was just a couple things about it that made it to where the movie itself, as a piece of art, I guess, it sucked in that regard. I saw it on a date. Baby Groot was adorable. It had one of the best action scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Definitely one of my favorites. But there is a few problems with the movie. And by the way, spoiler alert. There are things in this video that I'm going to talk about that spoil the movie. If you haven't seen it, don't watch this video. Watch the movie. Enjoy it. It is an entertaining movie. And then come back and watch the video. Character development. Whenever I watch a movie, I love to see characters develop and face challenges that are contrary to their original beliefs, or watch them evolve in some way to learn life lessons and stuff like that. That didn't happen in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I did see it a little bit in Guardians of the Galaxy 1. We saw these characters who all hated each other. They all had their different reasons for being where they were. But in the end of the movie, they all bond. They all look at each other as family. We are Groot. But we don't really see any sort of character development in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Now, let me show you what I mean. Peter Quill had the most character development of all the main characters in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And his character development was not so much development, so much as answering a question about his character's backstory. Because Peter grew up never knowing his father. He had never met him. Where was his father? Was he really this spaceman or whatever? And he does meet his father. And again, spoiler alert. I'm going to spoil things in this movie. If you haven't seen it, don't watch this movie. Go watch the movie, come back, and then like the video. But he meets his father, and he grows to bond with his father, and then at the climactic twist, turns against his father whenever he learns, you killed my mother, and just immediately starts taking shots at him. Now, that to me was a bad movie decision, because it took what could have been character development and just ripped it away. If Peter had pulled his guns and just froze for a second, being like, wait, I actually kind of like you, like you're my dad, and we've bonded, like everything that was that bonding was immediately nullified, ripped away whenever he just immediately starts firing. It tells me, okay, so he still loves his mother to death, and nothing has changed for his character since the first movie. Nothing changed for him. He was a stagnant character from start to finish. Nothing ultimately changed, but there was a backstory thing that was worked upon. So I give it a partial credit of character development. Gamora, her sister, was in this movie, and they continue to have scenes of interaction between the two of them. But here's the thing. In the first movie, Gamora would fight her sister and would beat her, but then would try to help her up and save her. And in the second movie, she would fight her sister, beat her up, and then try to save her. Her character didn't develop. It's actually funny. Gamora's sister, this girl, whose name I honestly don't remember because she was a side character, she had more character development than Gamora did. And that's weird to me, but it's what happened, because we see this person who goes from, I'm gonna fucking kill my sister, to being able to respect and not kill her sister, but having a moment of bonding that actually turned into a pretty interesting side story, going on in the movie that actually worked. And I consider that character development, but for a side character, not even for the main character. Let's see. Drax. Stagnant throughout the entire movie. Tell me one thing about him that changed. I dare you. Oh, that's right. The answer is nothing. He was a funny character and important to the plot, but ultimately his character was unaffected by the entire thing. He just was there. He played his part well. I give credit to the actor, but his part was not written in an interesting way. Nothing happened to him. I guess he built a relationship with another side character that didn't actually end up really going anywhere, but I honestly don't count that as character development. Let's look at Rocket. They set up that he was going to have character development. I was excited for that. There's a scene whenever they first crash on the one planet that I don't remember because I didn't pay that much attention to that detail, where they crash on the little forest planet, and he says something to Quill, and Peter Quill says something back to him. They fight. Oh, pardon me. They bicker, and then Peter says, "Are you just trying to have everyone hate you because it's working?" And that sets up a scene at the end of the movie for them to bond at the end and be like, you know what, you're not that much of an asshole. That didn't happen. Rocket, they made it appear like Rocket was gonna have that type of a scene, but he really was just an asshole the entire movie. Sure, he had good motivations, which he had before. He's always had good intentions, but he is kind of a dick. And so whenever I look at that, I'm like, that's not development. You didn't deliver on what you were setting up there. That was kind of an empty gesture of trying to make it seem like there's going to be something to it. And that kind of bugged me a little bit. Groot was Baby Groot. I didn't expect too much of him because it's a baby character. So pass. Also, he's an adorable little guy. I give him a pass. I give him a pass. He gets to go. It's odd because the character that really developed the most in my eyes in the movie was Yondu. Yondu by far was the character that developed the most from the first movie. In the first movie, we see him as a bad guy. He is an obstacle that Peter Quill has to overcome. He has this one magical weapon that's really cool, but ultimately it's an interesting dynamic relationship of the Ravengers leader and Peter Quill, and some of the quips they have back and forth and the exchanges that we see in the movie, and we see Yondu as a villain. However, in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, we see him not only as an ally, but as one of our new favorite characters in the Marvel Universe. And he ultimately, at the end, redeems the bad things in his life and gives his life to save Peter, who he viewed as a son. And there was a lot of actual character development where we learned more about Yondu. We saw him go from this just kind of relentless, unstoppable force in the first movie to someone with vulnerabilities, someone who has something to live for and to give his life for. That was the biggest part of character development in the movie, and it was a side character. And there's also something else I noticed. If you're blue, you do tend to have some sort of character development. It's actually kind of funny to me. If you're blue, you get character development. If you're not, content. So Guardians of the Galaxy 1 had a lot of content, a lot of meat on the bone. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 gave the illusion of having a lot of content, a lot of fat on its bones. So what do I mean by that? Let's look at what happened in the first half of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. They complete a job for people who they turn around and piss off. They meet Peter's father and go back to his home planet. They see the dynamic of we see the dynamic of the Ravengers, which I guess I'll count as a plot point because it does really lead to things that happen later in the plot. And Yondu's men turn on him and imprison both him and Rocket. That's the first half of the movie. Like, I want you to think about that. That's it. That's all that happened. If we look at the first half of Guardians of the Galaxy 1, we see Peter stealing the orb. Peter tries to sell the orb, and we have a fight chase scene where our heroes meet, most of them anyway. They enter and break out of the prison where they're with their new friend Drax. They arrive on a planet that's really the head of a god, and we learn an interesting economical dynamic of this universe. They meet and fuck up the house of the Collector, and they run from Ronan and his crew, and Gamora almost dies. One movie had a lot more happen in the first half than the other. And it's okay to have different pacings or amount of content in a film. You know, there are some movies that do fast-paced shit really well, and there's some movies that do slow-paced shit really well. Like, there's a lot of amazing movies in both spectrums and everywhere in between. There's nothing wrong with having a movie that has a whole lot and a movie that has not very much. But there is the fact that we're looking at a sequel to a movie where it tries to be the same thing. Like, it is a sci-fi action thriller. And it just goes in a different direction. But what bothers me isn't that they had a bit of a slower pacing throughout the movie, not as much happens, there's not as much content, it's that they tried to hide it. What do I mean by they tried to hide it? They made it seem like more happened and made it to where you were as entertained as if there was more content by just slathering on a whole bunch of jokes everywhere like icing on a cake. Now, the jokes were funny, don't get me wrong. It was an entertaining movie. The jokes were hilarious. There were some scenes that were funnier than they kind of ought to have been, but thank God we have Drax to laugh for us, and his laugh is goddamn contagious, I will admit that. But if we look at the first half of the movie, there were a ton of jokes. Like, you could barely go a minute without there being something else funny happening. And that, while it was entertaining, did get rather old really fast. It was really that the jokes were covering for the lack of content in the movie, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. Also, a footnote here, they didn't in any way further the Infinity War plot, which we have in a couple of years. We're going to have Avengers Infinity War, so I would have expected them to do like cap tap or, nod towards, hey, by the way, here's what's going to go on there. Like, it makes it to where this movie is a standalone movie, sure, but in a franchise where all of these Marvel movies are pointing towards a coalescent collision, it's kind of weird. This isn't something that's like a big critique on the movie so much as just a footnote of like, by the way, that kind of is weird. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh well. And that's essentially what I found as like big things that make the movie itself objectively a bad movie. Again, it was entertaining as hell. I would watch that movie again right now. As a matter of fact, when I went to a drive-in movie theater the other night, and on my screen was my movie, and Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was on the other screen that I could still see, and there were still moments where I was looking up being like, it's Baby Groot, he's so cute. Or, hey, I remember that scene that was really cool, that was really funny, stuff like that. But it just objectively was a movie that did have fundamental flaws that made it like, okay, that's a bad movie. You kind of rushed to get certain things done. There wasn't very much there was no character development amongst the main characters. The two side characters, the blue men, or blue people, because one's a woman. Yeah, you get what I mean. The blue people developed, everyone else didn't, which was strange whenever you see side characters developing, but the main character's not. And then the content wasn't quite there in this movie as there was in the original Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Again, fun movie, excellent date movie. I loved it. My girlfriend loves the movie, and it had one of my favorite action sequences in any action movie I've ever seen. The scene where Rocket and Yondu are escaping from prison, and Yondu has his new fin, and he's just wrecking shit. That was an amazing scene. That is one of my favorite well-choreographed action sequences I have seen to date. I can't really think of too many things that come in the same range as well as beating it. So, 2 thumbs up for that fucking action sequence. It was amazing. Their musical choices were, again, spot on for this movie. I think Volume 2 was as good a music track as Volume 1. But ultimately, the movie objectively, and I gotta be objective, was a bad movie. And they tried to cover up some of how bad it was in ways that I wasn't really a fan of. Any hoozle, if you agree with me or disagree with me, tell me in the comments section below, and well, we'll have a creative discussion, I'm sure, in the YouTube comments. Nothing ever goes wrong there. But go ahead and like the video, subscribe if you want to see more. I do plan on posting more content as I finally get around to doing it. I've been really busy this last couple weeks since my first video, which got a lot more views than I thought it would by this point, which, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I definitely appreciate it. I did not think I would get that many views this quickly, so I do appreciate all of you who are watching this video, anyone who likes, even if you dislike, tell me why. Tell me if you just, man, dude, you have a punchable face, Chase Taylor. You have a punchable face. Like, if it's something like that, go ahead and tell me. I'll be glad to take it. I will have a conversation with you. I'd love to talk about it. My punchable face. Anyways, You get the idea. The video's over. I'm not talking about anything anymore. And I will see my fellow denizens of the internet next time whenever I post another video, which hopefully will be this next week. We will see. Chase Taylor, rolling out.